Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or to my trailer. Not in the shop today. I have a whole bunch of black walnut here to offload. As I mentioned before in a previous video, that my friend Alan gave me a black walnut tree. So all I had to do was cut it down and clean it up and mill the logs. This tree had 3 trunks coming off of it, off the root ball. If there's 2, it's bifurcated, so I don't know if this is trifurcated, maybe. So I went off with my chainsaw and I cut down the first one, and I can make a tree go exactly where I want to, as long as the tree wants to go in that direction. And if it's leaning that way, that's the way I let it go. But the base of it got hung up on the root ball, and so I went to the very far end and started working my way back to the roots, and just kind of gingerly went along, and eventually I got it to fall, and I cut it up and got rid of the brush. The second trunk looked like there had some rot in the tree that it grew around, so I wasn't sure what I was going to get out of it, but I still cut it down and got rid of all the branches, and sure enough, down the center of that trunk there was quite a bit of rot. Now, after 2 days of hauling bushes, and this is spring, but might as well be summer here, it's 80 in the high 80s and high humidity. It was a couple days of hard work there. Luckily, on the third trunk, I got that to fall right into the brush pile that we were creating, and Andy came out to help me that day, so that helped a lot. Really reduced the amount of cleanup that we had to do, so that was by far the easiest day. Once we had everything cut to length, which for me is about 8 to 10 feet, which is a good size for me to manage for drying and going into the kiln, we rolled everything into a line. The next day I came back with my trailer. I painted all the ends of the logs to prevent checking and drying too quickly. And then the following day I brought the sawmill. Now, of course, the next day I brought the sawmill, and had I thought about this more than 2 seconds, I would have stacked the logs in the shade and set up the sawmill in the shade, because it got up to 90 degrees that day. I just didn't think of it. Every day's a school day. Next time. If you saw my last video on the sawmill, on using the sawmill, we had a skid steer with a grapple on it, which dropped the logs right onto the sawmill. Unfortunately, we didn't have access to any type of equipment, so this is the other method. It's using the ramps that came with the sawmill and using a couple of cant hooks and anyone available to help roll them up the ramps onto the sawmill. It's quite a bit slower, kind of interrupts the flow of the day, but it's not actually that hard, so it just slows things down. The first logs in line were the ones that had a bit of rot in it, and we did the top portion first, and it was okay. I got about half of an 8-foot section that seems to be okay. There was a bunch of carpenter ants in it, and the main part of the trunk on that one piece was useless. I had to throw it all away. It was just infested with carpenter ants and just no good wood whatsoever in there. This is the rotted section of one of those logs, and you can see the damage here from the carpenter ants. But in this day and age of epoxy, I think if you put like a clear in here, it would look pretty cool. I really don't do much epoxy stuff myself, but just in case, I'm going to hang on to it. So we started cutting into the third log, which looked very promising. I got about maybe a quarter of the way through it, and the sawmill died. Now, I know this has been coming for a while, and I had the new carburetor and a new fuel pump ready to go back at my house. Luckily, I was only about 15 minutes away, and so right there around 11 o'clock in the morning, we had to take off the carburetor and replace it. The fuel side of it in the bowl was full of sawdust. I'm not sure how it got there. I run a fuel filter, but these days it's cheaper just to replace the carburetor than it is to rebuild it, so that's what we did. That was a nice break in the day, right in the morning when it was starting to get hot, so replaced the carburetor and the fuel pump, had lunch, and then we got back to mill the rest of the logs in the hottest part of the day. At this point in the day, I started feeling a bit of resistance as I was pushing the carriage through the logs, so it was time to change the blade, and I put on a fresh blade, and of course, right into that first log, I hit a nail. And the blade was still cutting fine after that, but then I hit another nail, and that was the end of it. And that piece of wood, I didn't want to take any more chances. I had to change the blade again, and so I left that one as a beam, and maybe I'll make a bench out of it or something. Hit a nail. That guy there put it in there about 40 years ago. When you're cutting through a log and you hit something like a nail, it's a sound that you don't want to hear. It sounds like a little mosquito doing like a little fly by your ear very quickly. Just a much different pitch than going through the rest of the wood. Not a good sound, and you know pretty much right away what's happened. And right away you feel a bit more resistance. I kept one of the larger branches, thinking I might try and get a mantle out of it. There's a lot of sapwood showing with just a very little bit of the dark heartwood. So we'll see what it looks like. But a bit of work and maybe stain. If you have any questions, please list them down below. I answer every question. And if you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button or consider subscribing if you're not already a subscriber. Lastly, there was some short logs that I had left that had where the branches were coming off the trunks. So just like you'd have some nice crotch figuring in there. But it was the end of the day. We were all tired. But we went ahead and cut them, and I'm glad we did because the figuring in there is very nice, and they'll make some nice little tables. This probably as well, but
I don't know.
Ooh, look at that.
Oh, beautiful.
See?
Beautiful. That's a money shot right there.
There's your bench there, Alan.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Look at even the sapwood's kind of pretty right in there.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to take them over there and you scrape them, or I'll scrape them?
Oh, nice, huh?
Yeah, if I were you, Andy, I'd scrape.
You know, I'm trying to help you out here, Andy. But
That'd make a pretty clock, wouldn't it? Don't you think, Andy? That'd make a pretty clock.
It'd be the be the best chance a clock has of selling. Luckily, we managed to do everything in one day. So at the end of the day, we broke down the sawmill, cleaned up our sawdust as best we could, and came home. All that's left to do now is to start stacking and stickering this wood. It's going to sit in my barn for probably most of the summer. I think maybe by the end of the summer, the moisture content will drop to between 20 and 30%. Right now it's up around 70%, and that is, when you're looking at moisture content in wood, that is the weight of it. So 70% of the weight of the wood right now is water. So that'll drop down to about 25 to 30% fairly quickly, and hopefully the end of summer or fall, I will be able to put it into the kiln and finish drying it off. I also cut most of this wood 6/4, so about 1.5 inches thick. The crotch pieces I cut at 8/4, so they're just over 2 inches thick. I tried to get the mantle, that's 6 by 8, and I did one log at 4/4, so just over 1 inch thick. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'd like to thank you for watching, as always. We'll see you next time.